Hello, welcome to my channel and thank you for being here. Today's talk enters quite a grim chapter of our country's history, um, that of the political violence that raged through the country in the 80s in particular and way into the 90s, in fact. So, a dark chapter in our history. And um, the images, several images that I'll be discussing over the next few talks will be looking at that, some aspects of that past. So the image that you've seen and that I'm discussing now is captioned "A youth who was the target of an attack in which 12 members of his family were shot dead, talks to media the morning after the massacre. State security forces were implicated in the murders, then dubbed the AK-47 massacre. KwaMakuta, KwaZulu-Natal, 1987. And this youth was that you're looking at is in fact, and it's an era that his name doesn't appear in the caption, um, is Victor Ntuli, 21-year-old youth, whose family, when he was photographed the morning after the massacre had taken place the night before, and he was in fact the subject of that massacre. He was lived in this home, and it's his family that were massacred, and he was meant to have been the prime focus of that attack. And here he was in an impromptu press conference in the scene of the massacre in his home the morning after, and I believe he was successfully, stand corrected here, but I believe he was successfully eliminated some months post this massacre. And in fact, he had been the subject of previous attempts at his life had been made. So I'll read from just an extract from the South African History Online, where they have a post on this terrible episode, which says that the bloodshed escalated in the 1980s, and I'm quoting here, with the African National Congress, ANC, Inkatha Freedom Party, IFP, and covert elements in apartheid government structures playing leading roles. The ANC and IFP blamed each other for establishing no-go areas where members of the opposition entered under threat of intimidation, violence, and death. The strongly polarized provincial black politics, with the conflict carrying all the characteristics of an undeclared civil war. The massacre on 21 January 1987, several men armed with AK-47 assault rifles killed 13 people, including 7 children, in a house in KwaMakuta, KwaZulu-Natal. At the time, Archie Gumeta, a United Democratic Front leader, claimed that the attack had been aimed at Victor Ntuli, the 21-year-old founder, treasurer, and area organizer of the KwaMakuta Youth League. He was not home at the time. The KYL, the KwaMakuta Youth League, was affiliated to the UDF. According to the UDF, Ntuli had been the earlier target of an unsuccessful attack by people he had identified as IFP members. and I'm just taking excerpts out of this. I won't read the entire article. Um, the Kwamakuta massacre sparked off a wave of attacks during the hearing before the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the TRC. The ANC said that the Kwamakuta incident was one of a number of actions that had been undertaken by the apartheid government to discredit the ANC. This accusation, and I think that the media at the time, the mainstream media, dubbed. They were the ones. The big. I remember the big poster, news poster that on the morning after said AK-47 massacre, and the implication was that this was an ANC attack. This accusation added weight to the allegations that it was a third force, which was pro-apartheid in KwaZulu-Natal, that caused and perpetuated the entire conflict. These allegations were proven true during the testimonies from Colonel Eugene de Kock, former commander of the Vlakplaas Police Unit, and General Magnus Malan, former Minister of Defense. De Kock testified that he had provided assassination squad training and supplied weapons to the IFP. Malan was also alleged to have provided arms for IFP for its conflict with the UDF and ANC. The Kwamakuta massacre was supposedly perpetrated by trained assassins. Unquote. End of quote, rather. And so the second image that I'll discuss that's alongside this, the first one is from the same massacre, the same scene, and the caption reads, "Aftermath of the Kwamakuta massacre, in which 12 members, and it seems that the media was saying it was 13 members of a family were murdered during an overnight religious ceremony by unknown AK-47 wielding gunmen. It later transpired that the act was carried out by state-sponsored hitmen." Durban, 1987. So this image that you're looking at here is the backyard, very kind of typical in peri-urban settlements like Kwamakuta, far from the main, from a big city center like Durban, would have had back rooms like this, either metal zinc back rooms or, like in this instance, mud and daub, wattle and daub. And here you see, the household objects taken out after the the bloody mess of that massacre, in which I think 7 of these were children that were killed in this massacre. So these two images capture the horror of that period in which violence was endemic, and attempts were made to sabotage the people's push for liberation, to be liberated from apartheid, but not just apartheid, the political repression that took place that denied people through really repressive legislation the right to live freely, and to reach their true potential in the land of their birth. And these heroic young people, this image of Victor Ntuli reminds us, of the sacrifices that we made, young people made, and indeed all South Africans that took part or were party to the push for liberation took place, made the sacrifices that were made, many different sacrifices, some the ultimate sacrifice, as in this case, for our freedom. And that's why we should never take this political freedom that we have for granted, and in fact continue the fight for the economic freedom that is so necessary to bring about full emancipation and full liberation, and the full possibility for people to live lives of dignity and to fulfill our God-given rights as human beings to be, fully able to participate and contribute to the well-being of all. So, rather a somber way to begin the series, which I'm afraid to say does delve into this a little bit. I was never quite a war photographer, but I did do. I happened to be based in KZN at the time, and was managed to document some aspects of what I then was then dubbed in the early days the Natal War, and that was that engulfed finally the entire country, was engulfed in these acts of third force violence and state-sponsored violence to suppress the natural yearning for freedom of people that was mostly expressed through the United Democratic Front in the early 80s, and organizations like the Kwamakuta Youth League that made up the United Democratic Front. So I'll end it there and say thank you for watching. More information on myself and my work can be found on my website, a link to which, including my blog and email address, can be found in the video description below. If you like this talk, remember to click the like button and press subscribe. It helps the channel grow.